Hello and welcome to the 905er podcast. I'm Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
This is an episode which came about because I saw a movie at a big multiplex movie theatre. But it's not an episode about Spider-Man or Guardians of the Galaxy. Instead, it's a word-of-mouth recommendation, which led me to Silver City, Burlington, a few months ago, to see a film that was not only showing in Burlington, but which is in many ways about Burlington, or about what it's like growing up in the Canadian suburbs of the 905 region. Movies set in Burlington or any other 905 city are hardly 10 a penny, so it was obviously a good subject for the 905er to cover. But it was mainly because I enjoyed the movie so much that we asked writer and director Chandler Levack to join us. I Like Movies is the debut film from Chandler Levack, set in 2003, and telling the story of Lawrence Kweller, a 17-year-old boy attending Aldershot School in Burlington, who is obsessed with movies and movie making, and who is hired to work in his local video store. Levack grew up in Burlington and attended the real-life Aldershot School, and so the film has a clear autobiographical side. But Levack chose to make her protagonist male rather than female, something that allows her to explore the world of obsessive young men in a fresh and interesting way. Isiah Lehtinen gives an outstanding performance as the awkward and sometimes infuriating Lawrence, and the movie features a number of other excellent portrayals from his co-stars, most obviously from Romina D'Ugo as Alana, Lawrence's long-suffering boss at the video store. If you would like to see I Like Movies, it's released today to on-demand services such as YouTube Movies and Amazon Prime for viewing at home. More details can be found online at mongrelmedia.com. We're delighted to welcome Chandler Levack onto the podcast to talk more about I Like Movies.
You looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.
Welcome, Chandler Levack, writer and director of I Like Movies, to the 905 podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
And I just want to start off by saying I saw the movie myself when it was on the Burlington Silver Cities, I think it is, the big movie theater there, and absolutely loved it, I can say. And it was kind of the extent to which I liked this film was why we really wanted to speak to you. And obviously because it's also set in not just the 905, which is our purview, but in Burlington, which is a city that Joel and I are very familiar with. Joel hasn't had the chance to see it yet, so
No,
just,
not yet.
Listeners, just bear that in mind. But I have, and we're really excited to speak to Chandler about the background to the movie and everything to do with it. So perhaps that's the way to sort of kick off. For those who haven't heard about the movie, could you give us give us a kind of background to what it's about and how you came to make it?
I grew up in Burlington, from maybe grade 5 to when I graduated high school. So, and I worked at Blockbuster Video on Brand Street. So the film kind of takes place in Burlington in the year 2003. And it's about this very pretentious teenage cinephile who gets what he thinks is his dream job at like a local corporate video store. And it kind of chronicles his last year of high school and this sort of complicated friendship that he creates with his older female manager at the store.
And I guess, I mean, is there obviously there's a autobiographical parallel? There's a sort of change of gender there, and I guess you were a cinephile at school, and you chose to make that switch to a male character. What made you decide to do that? I saw in some of the other interviews you've done, that was like a very conscious decision to kind of change the way the character was viewed. Can you explain something about that?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I kind of I feel like a lot of times female filmmakers are sort of kind of expected that we can only write female characters, and there's not a lot of movies that have been, made by women that are about young men for whatever reason. I can't really think of any. And, I think there's something interesting about this idea of maybe women seeing men at a different angle than maybe they can see themselves, and sort of exploring this kind of coming of age movie where it's about a young boy, but actually his sort of coming of age is sort of dictated by this relationship that he has with an older woman that isn't sexualized. And I don't know. And it was just something that this character of Lawrence, just really connected with him for whatever reason. I know he's a lot. But I just and I feel like I know a lot of sort of grown up older men that are maybe that also love film, and there's this idea of kind of the film bro, the toxic film bro, and for better or worse, I was very curious about kind of what made those guys tick, especially when they were teenagers at a really formative part of their lives, and there was a way to kind of maybe set them on a path of healing before it's too late.
That really resonated with me, actually, I have to say. And I remember, and I mean, I grew up in a different country, not in Burlington, but there were kind of the muso kids who were into the music, and there were the film kids, and for whatever reason, the boys in particular tended to be very, very obsessive about whichever one they chose. And it was, it was almost like a kind of gang thing. It's like, well, you can't like this band. I mean, I was more the music side of things for whatever reason, and it's like, you can't like this band. This is off limits. And it very much was a sort of familiar story of this kind of almost obsessive love for something, whether it's music or film or whatever, but also how you handled it. There is a sort of toxicity to that, but underneath that is also just a kid who's kind of very sweet as well, at the same time as being difficult at times during the movie. So yeah, I thought I really sort of enjoyed that part of things. Now, I guess, I mean, the other question which usually leaps to my mind is like, when I have no familiarity with getting movies made, but I certainly know that it ain't easy. When you go to the people who fund movies and say, I'd like to make a film about Burlington, what kind of reaction do you get?
Well, I mean, this was a really independent film, so we made it with like a micro budget grant from Telefilm for $125,000.
Really, and it doesn't. And I have to say, it doesn't. No point was I. This is a low budget movie. This is like this. I really can't. It comes across like a really well done thing.
Thanks. I had great producers, and a great, production team also. I mean, I think for me, it was just really important. I really wanted to kind of be as faithful to my own personal experiences growing up in Burlington, and kind of memorialize this place that, as you mentioned, kind of doesn't often have kind of songs sung about itself, and really kind of pay tribute to this sort of suburban experience that I had growing up. I mean, I think it's kind of a love letter to Burlington. I don't know if, I think it's his treatment of, or his idea of Burlington's a bit tongue in cheek, but I think everyone has kind of a complicated relationship with their hometown and the place that they grew up in. And it was really exciting to me to be able to kind of memorialize it.
I think anybody from Burlington, certainly, and anybody from Hamilton, Oakville is going to get that. And I felt, I mean, there are movies which are set in kind of the American suburbs. I'm thinking of like Clerks and films like that, which are kind of, but there's a difference. There is actually a distinction between the Canadian suburb and an American suburb, and also it's done with maybe more affection than, say, Clerks was. I don't know. There's some really nice shots of the Skyway Bridge and stuff that particularly stick in my mind, and just that kind of snowy suburb, I guess, is slightly different from the Canadian perspective. That was really good to see. And now, I mean, the young actor who plays the main character, really stellar performance, because he is really in every shot pretty much. Is that right?
Yeah.
And how do you go about casting someone like that?
Yeah, I mean, he's a discovery. It's his first time leading a feature, Isiah Lehtinen, and he's incredible. We did a Canada-wide casting search, and I think over 300 actors submitted self-tapes for the part. It was all over Zoom because we shot the film at the height of the third wave of the pandemic, which was another challenge.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was just something about Isiah. He instantly was so captivating to me, and I think that he brings so much, not only like incredible comic timing but he's also he's an incredible actor. He's really intense. And it was funny. I remember showing my mom his audition tape, and she was like, "You shouldn't cast him because he's too much like what you were like as a teenager. It's going to freak people out, and people won't." And I was like, "Okay, he just got the part. Thanks, Mom."
Well, yeah, there's going to be. Yeah.
I when Roland through this idea for this episode past me, he was mentioning how he saw this movie. He's like, it's such a fantastic homage to Burlington. And we were doing research on you to say like, well, what's the who are we going to be talking to? What got me was the fact that you and I worked at the same Blockbuster.
You really?
The one on Brand Street or across from Central High School, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked there from like late 90s, 97 to 99.
That's
or 2000.
crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So my question to you is, because this is going to, you no doubt got to take advantage of the 10 free movies a month deal from Blockbuster.
10 free movies or free rentals a week.
Yeah, well, it was 10 free. Was a week, or I can't remember. It was like 10 a week, 10 free movies a week. Yeah. I mean that was like your Netflix for the modern age. Like if you're a Blockbuster employee, like that, if you think about it, that was like, that's a huge deal. I'm wondering how because I know there's other kids like here in Burlington. It's like there's not a lot to do unless you're playing sports, staying in, watching movies, going down that rabbit hole. And I'm, can you kind of tell us like a little bit about like growing up, like how that influenced or how that fueled your passion for films from a filmmaker's perspective, and just how do you go from a teenager who just loves films into this is my career and this is my life's passion that I want to explore?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think that also is just culturally a really different time, right? I grew up in the late, in Burlington, sort of in the late 90s, early 2000s. So you didn't have access to anything. Right. I wanted to, find out who the Velvet Underground were. I had to go to like Central Library, check out the CD, burn it to my dad's computer. And then I was like, now I can listen to it. It was like, I think at the end of high school was kind of when like Napster was beginning. So I remember my dad wouldn't let me download it because he was afraid like the cops were going to come to our house. Because I wanted to listen to like a Weezer song. So I had like one friend who had like the ability to download music. And I remember like writing this list of songs I wanted her to make me a mix CD, and I had to pay her $20. And she's like, "Okay, Chandler, well, I'm going to have to be at home for 6 hours downloading all these songs." So it's just like a completely different time culturally. And all you really had was like media telling you things. So like Much Music was a huge thing for me. Magazines like Spin Magazine, where I later wrote for and interned at. And then Blockbuster was like everything, because that was like the only way to like have access to culture, essentially, other than the Burlington Silver City, where my film played, which was an incredible full circle moment for me. So yeah, I mean, I remember just like, begging my mom to drive me to Blockbuster. And then she would get mad because I would spend like 2 hours walking around the store, like deciding what I was going to rent, probably getting the movies from you.
maybe.
To think about. And then, because that was our place that we rented movies at. So you totally were the person, renting
Friday and Saturday night, I was behind the counter. Probably.
Nice to see you again.
We'll talk about your late fees.
Yeah, I was probably massive.
Well, late fees played a fairly big part in the movie,
yes.
Along with that free limit. both of those are big plot points. That
Absolutely.
I don't want to give away any
Wild
spoilers,
Things
but
movie that does not get returned and just keeps doing fines. But yeah, I mean, I think also like I felt really the movie kind of touches on this too, but I felt kind of estranged a little bit from people. So I think, movies and culture and music and stuff. I mean, that was kind of this like way in for me to like a different world outside of Burlington, made me think about my future and kind of just, and then it was like this time where I was like absolutely falling in love with everything that I rented and really defining myself by that. So Blockbuster kind of was my film school before I went to film school.
And I guess I'm curious because we're doing this. By the time this episode comes out, it'll be just in time for the on-demand release for I Like Movies, and I'm curious. Like, I think you have a unique perspective on this question of that point in time when the video cassette and we had to go see movies in the theater. We kind of had to go dictated on a schedule, as opposed to now when I think movie watching is much more one-on-one, much more intimate. I'm curious, like what was your motivation to film this movie at that point in time, and I guess our pop culture zeitgeist moment, as opposed to kind of trying to take a more intimate, the current frame of mind today of kids being able to download movies and kind of doing their own research at home. Is it just what we do, kind of you film what you know, or is it what was that motivation there?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything cinematic about watching like a person like log on to Netflix and press a button first and foremost. And I feel like there's never been like a coming of age movie that's set in like a corporate Blockbuster video store, before. And I feel like a lot of people are nostalgic for video stores and that time in popular culture. Kind of, it was like the last moment where you really had to learn about art through physical objects as opposed to having access to everything. And I'm sure there's lots of things that we've gained from that. And certainly youth today are so much more knowledgeable about things. But I think also things are so much more disposable at the same time. When you rented that copy of The Italian Job at Blockbuster, and then you owned it for a weekend, like there's so much more incentive to actually watch it and treat it with respect than if you just kind of like, there's so many movies now, I'll watch the first 5-10 minutes and then go on my phone. And there's something like, I don't know, just sacred about video stores. And I think the way that you would be more curious and there's something about the power of like an image on the cover of a movie that could change your life, as opposed to now when it's like, I just feel like when I look at Netflix, I see the same 10 movies being offered to every time.
I'm the only one here who's probably old enough. Well, not know probably about it. It's definitely old enough to remember a time before blockbusters existed, before video even, and I remember sort of being in my sort of 20s and stuff, and we used to curse about Blockbuster because we didn't feel it was good enough. And oh yeah, they only have the mainstream stuff. And well, this may be Britain. I'm not saying that this was, and I'm not no disrespect to Blockbuster. I'm coming to the good bit in a second, but we were snobby arts folk, and it's like, oh, they don't have Rumblefish or whatever, But were we actually sort of spoiled in those days a bit? More than we realized at the time is the question I kind of want to get to, because I know that I'm paying a hell of a lot of money for Netflix, or actually I'm not paying for Netflix because they have been really mean to people recently, but to the other guys, and you think, well, I've got choice for everything, but actually it never seems that you actually have that film that I want to see. Is it do we have a kind of false impression of the amount of choice that we do have today?
Yeah, I mean, I read a statistic that said that the average Blockbuster had about 10,000 movie titles in it, and on Netflix it's a maximum of 300,000. And there's, they're on streaming services also, movies are getting deleted all the time. Whenever I look at Netflix, they never have the movie that I'm looking for.
That's I just noticed that all the time. It's like, oh, I really want to see, X. the one I'm always looking for is With Nail and I.
Yeah, I love
my teenage kind of, like learning every line of a movie film.
Yeah.
I can't find it anywhere. I used to have it on a VHS, but I don't have a VHS machine anymore.
Yeah, there's something about DVDs that are like actually built to last, and and you could reliably know that like probably that copy of Whitnell and I is not getting checked out every weekend.
I'm definitely, well, someone like yourself's heard of it, but not but well, I mean, I just want to say, I mean, it's a beautiful film. It has a lot of humor in it. It has a lot of really, it's I can't recommend it highly enough. And I'm not just saying that because it's set in Burlington. I kind of came across it via word of mouth, and was really enjoyed it as much as more than in many films I've seen in recent years. So I can't speak about that highly enough. But what's next for you? I guess, I mean, have you got a? Is your next film about Oakville or?
Yeah. The next one set in is Brampton, or
just work your way around 905. That'd be perfect for us.
Yeah. No, my next film. Well, I mean, I'm waiting to hear back about whether or not the Canadian government will let me keep making movies about really pretentious, narcissistic young people that are obsessed with popular culture. But hopefully the next film I would make would actually be set in Montreal. But I think the character will still be from Burlington. So
cool.
I kind of like the idea of maybe creating this sort of fictional universe, like the way that like John Waters always sets his movies in Baltimore, or like,
a fictional Burlington.
Yeah, like that the main character is always from Burlington.
that would be revolutionary for Burlington, because I don't think anybody would dare imagine. Well, I mean, the old saying goes, growing up here, everything, we always called it Borington because nothing happened here. If you successfully create a cinematic universe of Burlington, kudos to you. Like, just my tip of the cap to that, if you're able to pull that off.
And to an extent, we've created this podcast because the 905er is a pejorative, right? It's what people from Toronto say about people from Burlington, wherever it's the damn 905ers are clogging up the streets, and it's that is boring, and that there's no culture, and this is actually where most people live, certainly in Ontario, where most of us are 905ers, right? And yet the media doesn't really cover it. It tends to be Toronto centric, apart from election time when suddenly the 905 is what swings it. People pay more of attention. And I guess Burlington, to an extent, is kind of Main Street Canada, isn't it? It's certainly Main Street Ontario. I don't know. It's like a lot of places that most of us actually live. Is that sort of fair point of view?
I think that's the thing. Like, my film has a lot of sort of suburban iconography of like strip malls and power lines and parking lots and stuff. But like, most of Canada, most of North America actually looks like that. It doesn't really look, and I think Canadian cinema is always set in like, it's either Toronto or, like a regional small town in Quebec, or it's like a Newfoundland fishing village, and there's like no other stories.
It's true, isn't it? And we think, I mean, I'm just thinking of like, was it the films that Glenn Gould did back in the sort of 70s and stuff, which are all about the North and everything. But most of us never actually go there, and it's kind of tragic. But we live in suburbia, and
and I think there's something about like, if you do live in a place that kind of is boring and has nothing culturally exciting going on about it, it's like, sort of, if you're an artist, you have to you have a duty to romanticize whatever's in front of you, and I think there was something about all that kind of longing and like wanting to be somewhere else, and that actually was maybe useful as a teenager, and certainly made me then super excited and curious about culture, because that was sort of fueled my kind of inner fantasy life or something instead. And now I feel like I have a really like soft nostalgic spot for Burlington. My dad still lives there, and during the pandemic, I lived with him for a little while, and I spent a lot of time in Burlington, and I was just there, 2 days ago. And now I feel like Burlington is kind of my like comfort, like security blanket or something. Like when I go back, I actually like have sort of this warm nostalgic spot for like going back into the places I went as a teenager. Like
Does I have this theory that there's this weird thing that wherever we're born, wherever we're from, and wherever we spend time from as a child. I came from a town called Slough in England, which is it's a joke. It's the butt of many jokes.
Mhm.
It's where the original British office was set in Slough, and
Oh wow.
they set it
Yeah.
there because it's like where's a place that everybody loathes? Slough. So it's actually it wouldn't be fair to compare it to Burlington. But if I go back there, which doesn't happen very often because I don't have any family there anymore, there's just that sense of familiarity and being at home that you don't get anywhere else. And I mean, I felt that came through in the movie, that kind of Burlington may not win the prizes for most stunning scenery in the world, but it comes across very nicely in I felt in the movie that kind of affection for that I can't think of the right word, but the affection for that sense of place, I guess.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, I just feel like I just wanted to be sort of honest and authentic about my own experiences, and I feel like that's all I want to do with this film. And so setting it in Burlington, I mean, where else would I set it? That's where I grew up as a teenager. And I don't know, I just felt like there was something kind of exciting about actually being the first person to depict Burlington on screen. It's kind of a big responsibility, actually.
I was just going to point out, though, in my research for this bit, the movie is being quite praised internationally. You're getting quite the attention. I believe in Taiwan was a big market that was very receptive to the film, and so
Yeah.
you're not only are you a filmmaker of note in Burlington, now you're kind of like our international ambassador of culture. That now you know, I don't think you can make a bad film about Burlington anymore because we don't want people in Taiwan or elsewhere around the world to have a bad impression of us. But
Yeah.
what
No key to the city yet. Come on.
Marianne, get on it. Let's do it.
I tweeted at
But what does that change your perspective going forward a bit? That, I mean, this film is really well received, very positive. Does that change your motivation for the next one or for future projects at all, to from an artistic perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I it's funny, I just got back from Argentina 2 days ago. I was playing at a film festival in Buenos Aires.
Nice.
And it won an award there. And it's
Congratulations. Very nice. Congrats.
Thank you so much. It's I mean, I've been taking the film like all over the world since it premiered at TIFF in September. So I've been to Norway and Taiwan and California, and it's gonna play in Seattle in 2 weeks, and then it's gonna play in Australia. And so it's like definitely exceeded my like wildest imagination. And it's been really fascinating because I think, in Southern Ontario, it like kills like when you show this movie in like Guelph or Hamilton or in Burlington, like, and I went to the Burlington Silver City and I watched it, and it was amazing to see people being like, oh my God, LaSalle Park, or they mentioned Woods. And there's something kind of so thrilling, I think, about seeing yourself represented on screen. But then I was like, how is this thing going to play in Taiwan? Like, there's no way that anyone in Taiwan would understand a single thing. And it was amazing to see how people were like, I saw it 3 times, I'm going back tomorrow. And it just kind of shows that I think the more specific you are about your own experiences, the more that other people can relate to it. And I think going forward, it's just, I mean, it's very legitimizing to feel like, in my second feature, or the more films I want to make, like that, the more honest and authentic I am about, my own experiences growing up, that's just the way forward. That's how people can relate to anything that you make, I think.
And I just want to give a shout out to Aldershot School, which is how I learned about the movie. My girlfriend is actually a teacher at Aldershot School.
Really?
And actually,
that's so cool.
I believe one of the actors in the film was formerly a teacher there as well. Does that ring a bell with you? Or
I don't believe so.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's like I don't know.
No,
I'm getting my
one of
facts
the
wrong.
characters I named one of the characters the media class teacher after my media class teacher who was at Aldershot, Mr. Olnick.
That's what it was. That's what it was.
And I got to actually show him the movie, and he came to our premiere in Hamilton, and so that was really nice.
And it's funny that well, it's a school obviously a lot of people in Burlington are familiar with, and well, it's good to see a product of Burlington coming out. And I guess obviously you were that child who was obsessed with movies when you were at high school. I don't want to give away too much of the plot, but I mean, the main character he has very high ambitions for his sort of movie career, and part of the movie is a kind of struggle between what's realistic and what's possible and his actual abilities and blah blah blah. Is that a kind of thing that you were going through at the same time? And there's another character who sort of appears like she might be surpassing him in kind of skill and just getting stuff done. Were you sort of one or both of those characters at the same time?
I mean, I think I was really ambitious in high school and wanted to get out of Burlington as quickly as possible. But I wasn't as ambitious as Lawrence to think that I could apply to like NYU's film school. I definitely got the catalog, but just so I could kind of look at it as like a fetish object. But my kind of dream was to go to U of T and study film, and that is where I went. I studied cinema studies at the University of Toronto. I think also the movie that I made terrible movies in high school, like worse than anything that appears in the film. Like so cringe, and they were definitely just rip-offs of other movies that I loved, like kind of using the soundtracks from like Reservoir Dogs and Punch Drunk Love. They were horrible. I made horrible films, and I don't think I was that talented. But certainly my love of cinema kind of propelled me forward. I think it also just took me a long time to admit to myself that I wanted to be a filmmaker. For a long time, I didn't think that I was talented enough or really knew what I wanted to say.
Well, there's kind of that thing, isn't there? And I definitely had this growing up in my hometown. It's like, well, people who make movies, well, in my case, I wanted to be like a musician and stuff. And, newsflash, I'm not. But part of it was like, well, people from this town don't do that kind of thing. The people who do that come from Toronto or come from London or come from New York or wherever. And there's an extra barrier that you do actually have to sort of get over if you're from the suburbs, I guess. Do you think that's kind of played on your mind as well?
Well, I mean, Jim Carrey went to Aldershot.
Well, that's true, isn't it? Right. Burlington's got a history, isn't it? Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it was more just like I didn't feel like I had anybody to kind of share my interests, my passions with or something. I mean, I think also the people that I did have that were my friends, I think I alienated them from just kind of how intensely pretentious I was. With good reason. So I think, and the film kind of, tracks that experience as well. But yeah, I think maybe that's why hopefully if more people make art about places like Burlington, other people can feel like it's possible for them, or that they don't have to feel as alone or something. I guess that maybe that's my hope.
We should probably reaching the end of our time. I want to give a shout out. We haven't mentioned about some of the other characters in the film, and I was really thought we've talked about Lawrence obviously as sort of the main character, and you'll have to forgive me for having not prepared properly and written down the characters' names and not having a good name memory. But the blockbuster manager character is fantastic. And
thank you, Alana. Played by Romina D'Ugo, who's
and Lawrence's mom as well is. But those sort of two really important female characters in the film, I thought were just really, really terrifically well done. And
thank you.
we should wrap it up at this point. But as I think probably people can tell by now, I really liked the movie. I like movies a lot, and highly recommend that listeners go and find it. And not just because you live in the right part of the world, but because it's really good. And we really
Joel, you can check it out. I think
I
you have so much
I will.
to as a Blockbuster employee yourself.
Well, I you're shaming me into it, but it's working. And no, I'm excited to see what you do next. I mean, I am going to see this. My wife and I will probably go find a date night to do it. I'll be honest, that is a big kicker when you have kids.
I know, yeah.
It's a kicker to find the babysitter, and what are you going to do with that? And so, but I will say, because this is coming out in time for the on-demand release for I Like Movies. I'll be honest, that's where I watch most of my movies is on demand at home in my pajamas with fresh popcorn.
That sounds so nice.
As a former Blockbuster employee, as I should be watching all my movies from now on in my pajamas in my basement, fresh popcorn. But thank you very much for coming on and sharing this. We do wish you nothing but the best for the future, and we can't wait to see you at the Oscars at some point in the very near future, and we expect to be at least thanked in the in the speech.
Absolutely. And and we'll all go out for Dimitri's ice cream after.
You're the like this is why I like talking to you. You're the only one who, like, you can say stuff. I'm like, I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't need like what are we doing? Okay, I have to go research after. It's like, yeah, I know exactly what it is. Go to Silver City, Dimitri's, hits up Williams, and catch the bus home.
I did a double bill of Beau is Afraid and Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret at the Burlington Silver City like yesterday, which I don't recommend because that was an insane vibe shift. But the Burlington Silver City is showing like A24 movies all the time. Like they have some of the best like programming. It's kind of an embarrassment of riches there. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. Because again, it was like we need an art cinema or something. Well, good for the Silver Cities that they're showing good variety of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Chandler. Really appreciate this. Hope we'll speak to you again sometime with the next movie. And thank you again.
Thank you for thinking of me. It was wonderful to talk to you. And may the 905 reign forever.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.